Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
I hear you, Hans.
Excellent. Good. It looks like we need to wait a few minutes. Kay, are you, or Kieran, are you able to take some notes today again?
Yep, sure.
Perfect. Yeah, we're missing a few of our usual suspects. I don't see Yogesh, I don't see Hank, I don't see Steve is here, that's good. Last week, we consumed the full meeting slot to talk about SIG-Store, which was great, but we pushed a couple of other items on the side, which were related to the draft work. Hank sent me a mail to talk about a few agenda items, so I hope he's going to join. Okay.
Hey, Hannes. I wonder if not everyone knows which meeting link to use.
Oh,
I have been relying on you sending out a link ahead of the email. I did find it on Data Tracker this morning, but it's a little buried.
Okay. Let me send it right.
Okay.
That's it. Give me a second.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, Hannes.
Yogesh, good to see you. Yeah, I was worried. Oh, Hank is here now as well. That's excellent. Still going to send the link around just in case someone missed it.
Yeah, actually, I was struggling to find myself because I'm kind of send me the page as well, the link of the page.
Yeah, it seems that we always have these problems finding
Finding the links.
So,
Next time around, I will bookmark it. I remember that you had or someone had shared that base page where the all the list of meeting and agenda and notes are
yeah,
there.
I had sent that around. Okay, but I see Hank. Hank, you wanted to at the last meeting. You wanted to discuss a few items, and I think Yogesh, you too, because you had worked on the
Yeah.
thread document.
I worked on the use case document.
Yeah.
Hank, and others. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do a quick. John is here as well. Hey, John. Let's do a quick agenda bash to collect what we skipped last week and what you did work-wise in the meanwhile. So, use case. I want to talk about use cases. What is? You had sent me a pointer to the thread document, which you had started already. Do you want to talk about that too?
Not this week. Maybe
Okay.
next week, Hannes.
That's fine. That's fine.
I think use case discussion will itself cover good 30, 40 minutes possibly.
Yeah. What about the terminology?
I'm still waiting for some confirmation.
Okay.
From let me see if it is there. The other architects. So still waiting something from them. Yeah.
Okay.
But
you-
Hank, yeah, sorry, Hank has
um,
some other agenda as well, items as well.
Okay.
But
Hank,
yeah.
please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Hank. I'm sorry for being late, also for being on vacation.
Oh.
So that's why I'm late. Yeah, I had to prepare some dinner for my kids. So I think last week we consolidated the use case from Dick. This is number 1. And we did this with Yogesh so that we can, he proposed some simplifications and some rewording. And I think all of this work, well, we think we went through, and I think 4 use cases actually in its entirety, which makes the most of what is there. I think we did not touch the ones that were good enough. And I think we did also not at that point of time touch the ones that are the last 2 items that were originating from Janusz at the beginning. So I think these are, I'm not sure where these are, to be honest, because I'm literally on vacation. But I think that's the status quo. So we did a lot of updates. And yes, I think Dick knows a little bit more about how this worked out with his first use case and the second one.
Okay, so like since you all work together, who wants to talk about it? And like, can we share something on the screen, like some PR or some other text snippets also? Yogesh, you want to do that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So,
and Dick, go ahead. You're in the queue.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Hannes. Yeah, we just we did exactly that. We went through the materials as Hank indicated. There's just one dangling open item that we need to address. There's an emphasis on the distributor that makes it look like there's a hard link between the supplier and the distributor, and we need to address that. That's still an open issue. You know what I'm referring to, right, Hank?
Yes, exactly. I know what you're talking about. And I think that was an ongoing discussion on the list today where Charlie was raising just be careful here what exactly terminology we're going to use. So we're not stepping on any IPR feed. But in general, I think the I want to say trust score /TM trademark owned by someone else. So I'm just quoting a random word here right now that we do not own. That has to be broken down into its purpose, and we have to readdress terminology. Hence,
yeah, that's the third use case that I had put onto the list as a proposal, but I'm referring to the work that we still have with the first use case, where we have an emphasis on distributor, and the original concept was the trust relationship between the supplier and the signer. And then somehow the distributor came into that mix as well. So we just need to resolve those concepts. Thanks.
So Dick,
oh yeah,
do you have a pull request you can share and just present
I'm
on the
sharing that
screen?
right now. I'm asking for permission, sharing permission.
Yeah, I'm not seeing. Oh,
yeah.
no, got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but exactly, we do that. And so the distributor was introduced by Joshua. We accepted that with a comment of, let's go with this first. And now it's becoming more roles, I assume. So that's the point. So distributor, signing authority, and the package manager might be different entities. And we can't just clump them. I think that was the current understanding. But let me just shut up for now and let the other talk.
Yeah, just wanted to highlight, Joshua, you had made an excellent points on your email thread. And I hope you might have seen my email that we are very welcome for you to also contribute to PR, basing this PR or anything sub use cases you thought of, you put forward a suggestion. We are welcome to that as well.
Got it.
So,
thanks. Yeah, I haven't got around to drafting those yet, but it's still on my list.
okay, sure. So normally the other use case documents, if you see in RATS or any other use case documents in IETF, is that they are centered around different industries. Like if you take RATS document, they talk about use case for network endpoint assessment, machine learning model. But in our case, it's software supply chain and all our software use cases. So these try to highlight different aspects of software distribution systems and use cases which kind of highlight different set of problems. So this is at a high level, but I'm open to feedback to understand if anybody wants to see more specific instance of a more concrete use case. Then, but the only side effect or downside of this is it keeps the document growing, because everybody's quite keen on adding set of problems which manifest as a use case from a different domain or direction from the software side of things, and it is letting the document kind of increase in size, which is fine for now. We can maybe address it as software document reduction activity where we consolidate later. But this is the kind of making it more readable, general, and tidying up the work which Hank and um, Dick and others have done in my absence in when I was in sabbatical in December. So I
So
basically, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Any questions anywhere? I can't see the chat
Um,
queue or something, so
yeah,
please interrupt me.
Yogesh, do you want to talk through the changes you've made? They're obviously substantial, as we can see from the colors.
Yeah.
Quite a rewrite, no?
Yeah, it's almost quite a bit of rewrite. So the first use case is the use case which Dick had come up with, where there are effectively three entities. One is the package supplier or the package producer, one is the signing authority, and then one is the distribution entity which is um, distributing it. Most cases the distribution entity and the signing authority are in most cases same, but we have tried to kind of portray this use case as a verifiable authenticity in software distribution systems. So Dick, do you want to add or you want to explain a bit more of that?
yeah, you guess that's definitely. I mean, certainly what you described is occurring. The distributors are signing. That's very true in cases of the app stores, for example. But there are many cases where that's not true. One classic case we see is with systems integrators. Price Cooper's Waterhouse is a good example. They go into an environment and they provide a set of software packages as part of an overall solution they're delivering. So in that sense, they are the vendor / distributor of that software or software packages, which are which are produced by individual suppliers and signed by
Sorry,
whoever
did I
that
lost
supply.
Dick?
We
I'm
can
sorry.
hear you. We can
Hello?
hear him fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Me too.
So the vendor in this case, or the distributor, is in fact Price Cooper's Waterhouse as the systems integrator.
Hello?
They go
Is
in.
it me only or
Yes, Yogesh. It's you at the moment. Does not hear
Can you
you.
guys hear me okay?
Dick,
Yeah, I can hear you, Dick.
Okay, thank you. So the systems integrator in this case is Price Cooper's. They're the distributor of the software, which includes a set of packages that they're delivering. This happens quite frequently in the federal government, where they'll come in and distribute software as part of a solution. So they're not signing the software. Each package that they deliver has its own signature and supplier. So, but they are the distributor, and they're the ones who are providing the software to the consumer. I hope that clears it up. But to Yogesh's point, there are indeed cases where app stores are signing these packages and distributing them. So the case is true that does happen today. We just there are many more possibilities in there that we need to, I think, consider. Thank you.
Neil?
Become familiar with the tool. In order to speak, there's a microphone icon that is strike through under your name at the top left. If you click that, it's becoming non-strike through.
Yep, it shows that it's unstricken right now.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry.
Neil,
Okay.
Yeah, Neil,
Neil
that
had
was
his
good.
hand up here. So the real question, Dick, was from persona point of view, there's still three people. There's scenarios where we don't play with all three, but there are at least three just for the use case document that Yogesh was pointing through. Correct?
That's correct, Roy. Yeah, we identified three roles involved in the transaction. There's the software supplier who produces the code, the package that's being used, by the end user. There's the signing entity that has been authorized to sign that package by the supplier. And then there is one or more different distributors of that software that can be made available by different parties. You can get it on the Microsoft Store. You can get it on GitHub. You know, there's multiple distributors that could be involved in a transaction. But the two that, you know, with a trust relationship is established is between the supplier and the authorized signer of the software. Did that make sense?
I think so. I think with the rewrite that you guys did, everybody has to go reread it again.
Yeah.
I just want
just one distributor. That's the point. Is it could be multiple distributors, but there should only be one relationship between a supplier and an authorized signer. And
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I think there's multiple parties in the production as well, but just for the generic use case document, we'll just have 3 for the time being.
Roy, you totally skipped Neil. I would like to give him a chance to speak as well.
Hi, thank you. I didn't quite hear my name, so thank you. I guess one of the questions, I mean, first of all, I want to note that this notion of a distributor is, of course, very well entrenched in the Linux operating system, GNU Linux world, where there are packages and they're distributed by distributors. And there's many different distributors for the same set of packages. And I guess the question that I would have that I keep having when I hear this term trust relationship is, how is a verifying party going to know which signing authorities, that's kind of an odd term to me, signing entities are authorized to sign for a particular software supplier? Because I can imagine a supplier needing to use a different signer to go through a different distributor. So it certainly seems like a many-to-many relationship. And unless we have a very well-defined authorization defined for that, then how am I going to distinguish those?
Yeah, very valid point. I think if you see the line 94 here, exactly that's what's trying to highlight, to understand and verify that an actual
Yogesh, you're not sharing anymore. You need to. It vanished.
How come?
I have no idea.
Okay, now I am requesting you to. Okay, is it helping anymore?
Yeah, it's back here again.
Okay, so exactly that point we're trying to highlight is to understand and verify that an actual relationship link exists between the supplier of a certain software component package and the authorized signing authority that signs the package. So for the consumer of a release software, it wants to know what relationship exists. And that's what we are trying to highlight as a use case where we want to have that. So basically,
I think Neil is asking, like, how do you do that?
Architecture will explain that, because this is the kind of use case and the problem or the requirement coming out of it.
Okay, fair enough.
And and architecture will say the SCITT will have a kind of a claim which binds the supplier to the signing authority. And that's why if a consumer inspects the SCITT, he should be able to find that link. Yeah.
I guess I'd like some more clarification on why the supplier can't sign it themselves. And as soon as you get into this kind of delegation of signatures, you get into a whole realm of policy languages that I've heard groups struggle about for years, about, well, what are they authorized to sign on my behalf? Like, why can't the supplier sign themselves?
Okay, well, I'll let me take a whack at this, please. So the EO, or the Executive Order for the U.S., believes that self-claims is maybe a good start, but it's not sufficient. So they've asked for the ability of third parties. Well, let's get back to that in a second. Third parties to be able to do equal amounts of endorsements against the product. So if the self-endorsement from the producer is one thing, but having third parties be able to endorse is the other concept they're bringing into this whole mess. in the case of whose third-party endorsements you trust, is a question of, is it done by your corporate entities, your group policy through your company? Is it done through the store geolocation, which is Dick's case where he's talking about, hey, there's a green check mark shows up on the store, and those are the vetted set of auditors that are tasked with giving you and I guess in his terminology, trust score to say, hey, is this thing okay for you to use as a personal person? That doesn't work for corporations, or it doesn't work for governments, or so forth. This whole concept of taking it past self-endorsement to third-party endorsements is exactly what's being driven to us by the governments. Does that answer your question, Neil?
Because we certainly need to be able to allow for auditors to sign statements of some sort, and we need to be able to, but what I'm hearing is a distinction between a supplier, which forgive me, I obviously I haven't caught up in a little while, but I think of a supplier as being the entity that actually did the work. So in this case, the supplier would be the auditor, and the auditor would sign a statement that says, I like a particular product, package as satisfying a particular set of requirements. So why would, assigning authority give some impression that signing is something magic? I think all the things we want to deal with are going to be either a statement that I produced this, which is just, an authorship sort of thing, or a statement that I produced an opinion about something. I don't know. The term signing authority is a little opaque to me.
I agree. Signing authority to the difference. The difference of the role of the producer is he doesn't only just produce a claim that he thinks his software is made some bar. He also is responsible for producing evidence that the auditors get to look at to make their own determination. So they're not making claims for evidence. They're making claims, the auditor's job is to look at the evidence and look at the product and come up with a decision as to whether they trust it. That is a sole function of the producer or an anti-malware sort of companies, to produce evidence, not necessarily to produce endorsements for the product. That's why there's a slight difference in roles here. And in fact, a producer could subcontract out to Google Cloud or to SigStore or to some other factory like GitHub to produce their product and collect the evidence. And that's why I said there was more nuance on the production side.
Mike.
I feel like we've gotten a little off here in the sense that we've gotten into the solutioning side, which, while it is absolutely critical and important, the topic at hand is, are we capturing the use cases properly or not? And I think keeping the use cases simple and clean and to the 3 roles, as long as we're describing that well, that's good, and let's roll forward. And I think, as was called out by Yogesh, this implies that if we are describing one of these things, then yes, as we get into PRs and discussion and detail on how we are handling this in the architecture and related actual RFC, potential RFCs and IDs, that's where we're actually going to get into the actual solutioning side. Because to me, the bigger question is do we have the roles properly captured? Do we have the core use cases captured? And this PR definitely takes us that direction.
Thank you.
Hank?
I'm yielding the floor. I was setting this. I think that's fine. So sorry. I also forgot what I was trying to talk about.
Another thing I wanted to highlight. Another thing I wanted to highlight before we move on is there was a lot of
Yogesh, there are still 2 people in the queue.
Oh, sorry, I can't see the queue. So
okay, no problem. Let Charles and Dick respond first, and then you may want to summarize.
Yeah. Thanks, Hannes. So this is Charlie Hart. I guess I am scratching my head a little bit about why a supplier is not just as good of an entity for providing evidence as an auditor or anybody else. If I'm a supplier, there's a lot of different use cases here down the road, but for software, for example, I might want to say that I have complied with a bunch of standards and provide evidence about those standards. And that is, those are factual, those are evidence, and they can be signed by me and have full, public authenticity along with them. So if there's anything that, it sounds like, there's the signature authority and the auditor and a whole bunch of these other things are a little bit of a fuzzy role at this point. And I think that, almost anyone who is entering information into the SCITT instance should have the authority of, that is sort of granted to them by the role. And the supplier role is one of the most important roles, and they should have full authority to put in whatever they want on their own, with their own faith and credit.
Yeah.
So that's, if I'm missing that, I mean, it sounds like that's what the discussion was saying, that suppliers are not going to be able to do that. That sounds to me like an omission.
No, Charlie, to clarify, that's not true. Actually, that is, Charlie, what you're explaining is for the next use case where we talk about multi-stakeholders and what different entities can put in, produce reports about. So I think what you are trying to say is not missed in the document, but Roy, please add.
Okay. A discussion sort of felt like it wasn't going that way. So I just wanted to react. So thank you.
That's perfect. Yeah. Dick.
Thank you, Hannes. So I'd just like to say that I think Michael Perrock got it exactly right, that there are 3 roles. But it's important to note that, each role can be served by the same entity. We see this a lot with Microsoft. Microsoft is the supplier, they're the signer, and they're the distributor. They serve in all 3 roles. So we need to just be clear that the roles exist, but they can be served by one or more entities serving in those roles. Yeah. So I think having the semantics clear and making clear that when we say supplier, we mean the party that produces the software and not the party that is actually distributing the software. I think these are the kind of semantics we need to make clear. And the last thing I want to say is we talked about, well, how do you verify this? And that's a really good question. But I'm going to answer it from the standpoint of a consumer. So the consumer is able to verify this by checking the SCITT registry. So if an entry is in the registry, they can assume that someone upstream has done the work to do the verifications, whether that's the notary or whoever that is. But the point is that there's going to have to be a process somewhere, and someone has to perform that process to do those validations and verifications before placing an entry into the registry. So the consumer answers the question by saying, is there something in the registry declaring the trust? And if there is, they can assume that someone did the work and it's trustworthy. But somewhere up the line, someone has to have done that work. And that part, I think, is somewhere in the SCITT sausage making process where we go through that. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. Hank.
Yeah, so I want to address Charlie's very valid comment. Of course, the supplier is the first entity in charge. And they should state as many things they believe in and trust in, and they are pretty assured that it's confident that they did it as a self-signed statement. First party attestation, as NIST is calling them. That's coming from you. So now,
first party attestation. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. First party attestation in NIST, this is called that way. So that's not evidence. That's just how what you think you can prove. That should be your obligation to put on here. Now, some of these first party attestations involve, like, I'm using this as an example, a secure element FIPS certification. You got that from something that can do these FIPS certification. That's a third party. You can state you did that and are FIPS conformant, but you can also put the FIPS statement that is coming from a third party or make them, put it on the ledger. That is a third-party attestation that is either relayed by you, so you signed something that is already signed that says that you did it, or the third-party attestation happens by the third party. And if you're looking in the very near-term future, third parties will make these statements. So they're pretty much would offload some of the duty of distributing them. And so I think some of what you're saying about your product is just up to you. Some of the things that you are about your product are things you paid other people to certify, and you are stating it, which is an indirect third-party attestation. I hope that's how I think that is. I'm sitting at fact. I'm not sure.
That's
Maybe
exactly right. That's
okay.
Totally congruent, and yes, exactly right.
Yes. Yeah. So the third-party and first-party attestations are sometimes a little bit mixed because you can relay it for the third party, of course, if you already own it. Okay, that's all.
Yep. And then just real quick, the executive order is going to rely on self-attestation, a first-party attestation for, about 99% of the stuff that goes in there. And there is a provision there for testing and other external activities for certification, but we need to handle both of those. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't charging down the second-party attestation thing, with the exception of the first party. So thank you.
Okay, I think Mike, you're next.
I was gonna echo. I think Charlie got at something good, and I think Hank helped clarify quite a bit there. One thing I did want to point out, and this might be worthy of just a bit of text in the use case side, but that first party attestation side, me saying that my software complies with such and such standard, that's what sets up the ability to have a trust but verify. And that trust but verify situation is really important when you're deploying out into various either governmental or contractual type scenarios, et cetera. So I just wanted to call that out, and because I think that is a very critical aspect, right? When I have a customer that comes to me and says, "Oh, did you meet your contractual obligations? Do you meet the needs that you say you're meeting in order to deploy into my network?" And I'm going to have some third party verify that, or have you have some third party verify that that's independent. That is 100% dependent on those first party claims coming in as the software producer saying, "Yep, I am saying that I did such and such," right? Whether it's FIPS or something else.
Good.
Very valid point made by Mike. And
Neil,
he's still in the queue, I suppose.
Neil is in the queue. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still really. Maybe you need a different term, but the term signing authority invites a great deal of confusion. I hear some people kind of talking about it as if it's third party anytime that a third party would opine something about an artifact that's a signing authority, but that sounds like a bad term to me. If it's some sort of generic delegation opportunity where it's me, the provider, giving someone else authority to sign for me, then I'm very nervous when I hear Dick talk of some generic notion of an entity being trustworthy in general. It's like we don't trust anyone for everything. So if we delegate, we need to be very careful what we delegate it for. So there's a different term than signing authority. It would cut through a lot of this. Or if we just simplify it down and say, there's a statement and there's someone who authored the statement, and then we have a policy language for what sorts of things you can sign, which might be packages or audit reports or certification statements or compliance evidence or delegation of authority. I just don't like signing authority. It doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, Dick, do you want to respond to that really quick?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to changing it if someone wants to just call it the signer, but it's a role. Let's just be clear. There's a role. Someone's doing this thing. And so in that party who's doing that has been authorized to do so by the supplier.
But I think Neil brings up a good point, which I believe I hear in this discussion is that we need to qualify what specifically this entity does, this role does, and maybe then it's possible to come up with a term that is a little bit more descriptive, because I think my takeaway is that it's not really about the act of like digitally signing. It's really the additional verifications that are being done and the statements that are being made about that, in this case, software component from a supplier. So it's but currently it's kind of suggesting that it's really about like literally only about the digital signature, and that's it. Neil, is that fair?
In the use case that I presented, Hannes, you are correct. It is just about the one point about the digital signature applied to a software product. It's not other attestations or anything else. It is the ability for a consumer to say the signer of this software product and the supplier of that software product are in a verified trust relationship. And the consumer can verify that by checking a SCITT registry where someone has done the work to verify that relationship and place that information into the registry for all to see.
Yeah, but that doesn't deserve a place at this high level. I mean, you're making a very you're somehow assuming that the supplier can't do digital signatures, which if we're in trouble if they can't do that, and B that the
confusion
supplier can somehow clarify what it is that they're allowed to sign, because they can't sign, your tax documents. They can't sign. Software is only one of the things that we're trying to cover in this very general thing. And so we can have a use case specific to software, but we need an architecture that's more general.
Yeah, this is a use case discussion. So you're right. It is very specific. And I just want to be really clear on something, and I think there's still confusion here. So I just sort of try one more time. What we're describing here are roles. They're not people, they're not entities, they're roles. There's some function that's being performed. And that function can be performed by entities or parties. So yes, the supplier of a software product can also be the signer. They can serve in that role. So let's be really clear that what we're talking about here are roles, and those roles are fulfilled by entities who you can, like I said earlier, I see frequently Microsoft is the supplier, the signer, and the distributor. So one entity is serving in all three roles. So let's distinguish roles from entities, because that's a key concept to understanding this use case. Thank you.
So Dick, Neil, there's a disconnect between you two. There's a difference in the role. I think Neil says, hey, the signing authority is the issue. And the real question, anybody can sign. The question is the configuration of the policy and say, hey, that signature is valid for what the content you're submitting up. And that's different. And I think that's where Neil's asking us to change some of the terminology. Is that not correct, Neil?
Perhaps I am just confused by looking at a use case versus something that is not directly related to something that will be in the architecture. But regardless, I think the use case should clarify under these circumstances why the supplier can't do a bloody digital signature all by themselves. Like, when do you need to give it to somebody else, and under what do you authorize them to sign for, and how do you allow a verifier to know when a signing authority's signature is allowed, meaningful, useful, and when it isn't? Because I can't verify whatever is done in this use case without some other policies, artifacts, something.
I think there are two aspects. One is if you are expecting a clarity of the roles, we can certainly help in that by adding more text. Like a package supplier is releasing the package, and it is there is another role which is a signing authority. But if you are saying that how that relationship needs to be established is to be clarified, that will go in the architecture.
But I think I understand what Neil is asking for, and maybe it's in this specific use case, it's really about literally the signature, and then of course the question is a good one of like, why can't the supplier do the signature itself? It's just a signature. But if it's more than a signature, some other verification is taking place, and then maybe that's an add-on to this use case, probably sort of maybe a separate sort of item here in this list. I think that's something we need to find out.
Yeah. Is there a specific example where he would like to say here that, okay, the signing authority is doing more than the signature? What exactly you mean by that, Neil?
Now, maybe like if we can answer the question of like, why is the supplier of the software unable to sign the software themselves? I think that would already sort of give us a starting point. I see John joining you.
Exactly. Yeah.
The problem is that's a false statement, though. What that statement is false. A supplier can indeed serve in all three roles, including signer. There's nothing preventing that.
But what's a circumstance in which a supplier of the thing can't sign by themselves? What's that circumstance?
Can I have a go at that?
Sure.
Because I think in many ways I'm starting to wonder if this is going a bit off topic for SCITT altogether. But if I have a view on Dick's use case, and I don't, again, nobody is saying that the supplier cannot. I think the suggestion is that different identities will perform these roles, and a legal entity might include multiple identities. And an example of this that happens a lot is with things like common criteria or FIPS validated products. So the process that I ran for about 15 years in the hardware security module business was one where the software team would create the firmware, but only the security team could security review and approve the firmware, and only a very small group of card and key holders would actually then bless and sign the firmware that could go into live modules. And the paper trail and the attestations and the supply chain integrity that goes into that is not just the fact that the thing was signed, but also the set of processes and signatures and verifications and security reviews that went into deciding that this was a good thing to sign in the first place. And so I guess there's a question to Dick. Is that the kind of thing that you're thinking of, Dick? Is that there's a bunch of processes and process artifacts that would go behind that signature, not just the signature itself?
Yeah, that is precisely correct, John. That there's a process that goes through that performs the verification of this trust relationship. And I don't have the answers to exactly what that process is. I think that's something we would have to work out here. But there is a process. But from a consumer standpoint, their process, the verification process, is actually quite simple. All they have to do is check a SCITT registry. And if there's an entry in the registry, then that means that someone has done the work to verify that trust relationship, whatever that work is.
Yeah.
But from a consumer standpoint, it's really easy for them to check. If it's on the registry, then someone did the work to check it.
Yeah, so somebody's taken responsibility for it. I was being extremely over-specific, and I don't want to put what I said into the specs anyway, because it's far too much detail.
No, John, that's use case 2, actually. That's very good, actually, and that is a use case 2, where you are evaluating the multiple component parties are evaluating the software product on certain aspects, common criteria, FIPS, all that is a very valid use case, and that is highlighted in the second use case, multi-stakeholder evaluation of a released software product.
Yeah,
which we have taken care of, John. Yeah.
Okay.
That kind of thing makes sense to me. I guess I don't understand why. Well, does that subsume all reasons for having this quote unquote signing authority pulled out? Is Dick's use case just a subset of that thing? Because I think we're going to need to have to handle the general case where you're signing a variety of compliance audit steps, and if that can handle it, and if we don't end up with this term signing authority ending up in the architecture, maybe we're fine. But it really would be helpful to know why somebody, to understand we're not going to trust just any signature we see in the registry as saying everything's good, because anybody can sign anything they want. So anyway.
Anybody can sign anything, but if it is put in a registry where anybody can audit it, then that ownership is kind of the responsibility is taken there, right? Anybody can then come to you and say, hey, why did you sign this, or you signed it incorrectly? That kind of responsibility you're taking by putting in a transparent registry. That's what we are trying to highlight here indirectly. Yeah.
But we have lots of ways of identifying ourselves, and maybe you're going to try to handle that with the policy for who gets to actually enter things into the registry. But I thought we were going to have a very generic registry and kind of open for anyone to sign anything they want. So we need to have a policy language that allows users, verifying authorities, to say, this is how you express to me something that I will be able to track down and figure out if the chain of trust meets my needs.
So maybe one thing we can do is let's just see if we all agree that there are indeed three roles performed in this transaction. That is, and I'll call it, digitally signing a software package. That's the transaction I had in mind when I submitted this. Is that someone is digitally signing a software package, and a consumer wants to verify that digital signature and the supplier of that software are in some type of trustworthy relationship. Is there any doubt about the three roles?
No, let me jump in. I've been on the list for a while. I don't think there's three roles, and I think we need to boil it down as a rule that you can only sign for yourself. Any entity cannot sign for somebody else. You can only sign for yourself. You can say something like, I'm signing for that other party, but you can only sign for yourself. Another party can say, I'm delegating such and such to this entity. Exactly. And that's your signature. And then that other party can sign for themselves. This idea that you're splitting the role and that you're having somebody delegated and say, you're signing for me, there's going to have to be some other thing that's where that other party says, I'm delegating that to that entity, and there's a signature on that. So I don't think there's additional role, and I think that we should just do away with the language that there's an authorized signing authority. Thanks.
The point is, we are not saying the signing authority is signing for itself, but it is signing a package which is coming from a producer which it has not produced. The producing entity could be a different role than the signing authority who says, yes, this package is trustworthy, you can use it. That kind of assertion is putting.
Then we're overloading the term signing. We're going to have to say something like I'm approving this entire package. It has all kinds of signatures on it. I'm reviewing it. I've audited all the signatures. And now I'm putting a stamp of some kind of logo on it that says that it is good according to my rules. That, I believe, is well above anything that we need to actually deal with directly with the mechanism in SCITT. But since we're talking about it, I still think whoever does that can only actually sign for themselves. And I believe that the confusion here is what the term signing means. And if the term signing means I'm collecting everything together, I see the original supplier put their signature on it. I see that the SIG store guys put their sort of weak signatures on it. I see that a test house tested it. I see that it actually, somebody says it meets FIPS, whatever, and that team says they've done it. You get all these teams together, and then somebody that's aware of all that says, okay, according to my checklist, I've gone down and everybody has signed this properly, and now I'm putting a big stamp of approval on it. That's a different thing than just a signature. That's, I think, where we're getting into trouble with different people reading that and then in their minds coming up with a different concept.
Hank, you are next.
Thank you. So I will cast shift blame on me. Sorry for signing authority. We ripped up that word by going through the first reiteration of Dick's use case, and I'm sorry for the confusion. Second, Ray is right. Everybody is responsible for what they're saying by their own. And if they say, I authorized or delegated some authority or something like that, that's a statement that you own. And you can only put your own statements on SCITT. That's how SCITT works. So yes, Ray is absolutely right. But one thing, we are not taking into account the solution here. We are taking into account the problem. So the problem is not a problem, it's a use case. What are we doing? What are we trying to do here? And as a responsible stakeholder, I want to designate a signing authority, which is absolutely fine, but it's not indicating what the whole solution will be. So now we have to just make the use cases less confusing, as they are at the moment, it seems, about that, and say every role or entity which will end up in the architecture, what we use in the use cases will not be the final thing. They are layman's terms, they're colloquial, and that's just the need of a single certain use case perspective. And all of them combined will end up in what just Ray said. You're just responsible for what you say, but you can delegate something with it. So I think there's now a weird discrepancy between what a use case supposed to look like and what the solution will encompass in the end and what your names will. So we have to split that a little bit. And yes, I absolutely agree with everything Ray said. And I really apologize for signing authority in the use cases because I didn't know that would make such a confusion. But it's just one use case. It's not the entire solution. And that's all I say.
Charlie, you are in the queue.
Having some trouble with the conferencing thing here. So I think so first of all, Hank and Ray, I agree. But I do think that Dick's use case is something we should think about. Specifically, he says, okay, I got a software package, I got a signature. How do I tell if it's a real signature? And that is not the same thing as signing for that piece of software, I think. I am not 100% sure that I feel that use case is compelling, but it is important, I think, to just make sure that we're talking about apples and apples here. So, Dick, does that represent your what you're trying to capture here?
Charlie, it was the use case is specifically aimed at an empirical case. This is not theory. We see this all the time in our supply chain risk assessments. Is that you get a software package, it's digitally signed, the signature in the package. You can't really tell if it's a sign, if the signer has been authorized based on what's in the signature versus what's in the software itself, the supplier identification. So this is not theoretical. This is happening every day, where this reconciliation of here's the digital signature, it's Oracle America, and when you looked inside the software, the JRE, it said Oracle. Well, how do you know that Oracle and Oracle America are in fact, the same thing? Intuitively, we know they are, but to a computer checking those two strings, there's no way to know that there is a trust relationship between Oracle America and Oracle.
But wouldn't Oracle have the signature verification hashes and all that stuff assembled and sent with whatever that package was?
Well, that's the problem, Charlie, is anyone can, and I wrote an article about this, anyone can sign the JRE. I did it. I used REH key to sign the JRE, and sure enough, that thing installed without any issue at all. And so therein lies the problem, is that today, the way digital signature verification is performed, it doesn't really check to see, is this party authorized to sign? It just says, does the MAC correctly calculate? And is the key signature and a valid certificate? It doesn't have any connection to the trust relationship between the original supplier and the signer. Anyone can sign.
Well, that's true, except that when you get the value as part of the kit, you are getting the bits and the hash from the same entity, and if that entity that you got it from is trusted, then the hash should be as well. Seems to me. I mean,
this is where the distributor is so important. That you can pull the package from any distribution point. I could get the JRE, or I could get a package from. I can get Ubuntu from one location. I can get it also from Amazon. So the distributors can be different, and so you want to be able to verify that trust relationship from wherever you got the package from.
I just want to jump in again and ask if there's any work in here or any use cases describing the need for a more general policy language. And a policy language is, again, something that has come up in this field for decades. And it helps a verifier, it helps document what a verifier needs to check. For these kinds of products to be deployed in this kind of realm, you need FIPS approval, and it needs to comply with RFCC whatever, and it has an SBOM. We need some use cases are going to involve pretty complicated recursive policy compliance. Is that something that we are describing? Because if we don't have that, I don't have any idea how any of these use cases are going to be verifiable in a generic way.
So
Hank, Hank jumped into the queue.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say a quick thing about policy language. So I won't say any name, but there's one thing that seems to be popular with like a majority of the players, and that's a different topic. And we don't know if we want to make that a transparent content type or just an opaque SCITT data today. And I think we have to make our own call on policy language by its own. But I think it's a very valuable question that comes up again and again. I think that's a good candidate, but it's not a standard. It's just a very good practice. So we have to see.
Yeah, and it sounds more like a solution. What policies you want to bake into your transparency service to make it really a solid transparency solution. So it's more of an architecture discussion rather than shall we discuss it in a use case document, to me.
Well, I think I hear in the meanwhile I hear at least three use cases here. Glad that we walked through this in that detail, because it didn't occur to me previously. Like I heard John's use case. I heard Dick saying, like, phrasing this in a very different way, namely more from the consumer side. Obviously, this touches more on the trust anchors. It touches on the identity management piece. So there's certainly some challenges there that I think we better describe, because that will come up. And I also hear the issue of that Neil that just brought up, the more complicated use case where you actually want to have some complicated verification to actually make sure that indeed the steps are taken that ought to be taken. So now we are at the end of the hour, unfortunately, already. But I'm curious, like what's definitely this text needs some update. The question is, like, how are you guys going to do that? I hope hopefully you do it fast, because while the discussion ideas are still fresh.
Yeah, I mean, who is next on the you.
Hank wants.
Yeah, we can't solve this today. Issue comments, issue PRs, put email to the list. I think we have an understanding. I think next week, sorry, I'm on vacation this week. I can help getting this bidirectional calls again, but issue your concerns. Neil, if you're still online, maybe put your 3 most concerns into a current PR as a comment or as an issue. And I think that's driving the discussion. Same goes to Zach and to Joshua's gone. Yeah, okay. That same goes to Joshua, of course, but he also promised to.
Please read the full PR and then make a comment.
Yes.
I would request, so that if any other use case is addressing your use case, then you don't need to kind of come up again. Yeah.
But I think it would be unfair to just put it just on Neil to make him do the work, because I think
No.
but
I'm
there's
not
also
saying
good,
everyone should read and make comments. And if you think there is a gap in the document, or if there is use case is missing, by all means, please comment and say this use case is not seen in the document. And we are happy to discuss with them individually as to how to better understand their use case and bring it here. That's what I did.
Ideally discuss it on a mailing list, because then we can shortcut the discussion time in general, because then everyone is on the same page.
Okay, that makes sense.
Email list. Email is the best place. Everybody, seriously.
And thanks to Kieran, Kay, and Brian for taking notes. I think there are a couple of good points captured there as well. It must have been awfully difficult to sort of capture the essence of the discussion, because there was so much discussion.
Yeah, but that's how it should be. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
Come on.